Contemporary author Jonathan Safer Foer teaches that we Jews have 6 senses: touch, taste, sight, smell, hearing, and memory. While Gentiles experience and process the world through the traditional senses and use memory only as a second-order means of interpreting events, Safer Foer teaches that we Jews, for us, memory is no less primary than the prick of a pin, or its silver glimmer, or the taste of the blood it pulls from the finger. The Jew is pricked by a pin and remembers other pins. It is only by tracing the pinprick back to other pinpricks, like when his mother tried to fix his sleeve while his arm was still in it, or when his grandfather's fingers fell asleep from stroking his great-grandfather's damp forehead, or when Abraham tested the knife point to be sure that Isaac would feel no pain. It is only through remembering, Safer Foer says, that the Jew is able to know why it hurts. When a Jew encounters a pin, he asks, "What does it remember like?" Today is Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of the month of Av, but we suspend our mourning on Shabbat and observe the ritual observance of the day tomorrow. Here we are again with the prick of a pin. What does it remember like? Echa, alas. The Book of Lamentations begins, Echa yoshva vadad ha'ir rabati am haita ke'almana, rabati vagoyim, sarati bamdinot haita lamas. How solitary sits the city that was once so full of people. She has become like a widow. She who was great among the nations, a princess among the provinces, she has become a vassal. Bitterly does she weep at night, her tears stay on her cheeks. No one among her lovers comes to comfort her now. All her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They have become her enemies. Is this lament of the prophet Jeremiah what today's news remember like? God forbid. Anxiety is high, and these are not false alarms. This is not Jewish paranoia. This is our 6th sense telling us that things are going from bad to worse. Even the authors of the deal know that there isn't anything truly good about it. It is impossible to construct a good deal when the situation is so bad. Iran, once a great civilization, is now in the grips of bad people with bad intentions, and so there is no good deal to be found. The world leaders could have said, "We do not negotiate with terrorists," but after 20 months of negotiating with Iran, the question of the day is how to leverage the most out of a very bad situation, a very grave and a very dangerous situation. A disclaimer. You know I am a rabbi. I am not a political analyst, nor a journalist, nor a nuclear physicist. I do not pretend to understand the intricacies of international diplomacy, nor the difference between plutonium and uranium. And this is a synagogue. This is not a political party, nor a military think tank. We should not pretend that we are of one mind, nor that we need to be, but we should strive for one heart, one devotion. We will rarely agree on tactics, but we must agree on intentions. What is our devotion? What is our intention at this hour? To protect the state of Israel and peace-loving people everywhere. A rabbi is for teaching and for leading in the ways of Torah. A synagogue is for learning how to talk to one another about the most meaningful things in life. A rabbi is for helping to make sense out of the world by viewing it through Jewish wisdom, through the lens of Jewish memory. And a synagogue is where we learn how to treat one another and how to take responsibility for ourselves, for our fellow Jews, for the state of Israel, and for all humanity. My personal view is that the deal was poorly negotiated and is littered with dangerous concessions and loopholes. It will not help the Iranian people. It will validate and empower a vicious Iranian regime. I am surprised by how narrow was the scope of these negotiations, or at least the outcome of these negotiations. Iran's internal human rights violations seemed not to have been addressed. Its export of terror machines seemed not to have been addressed. A call for Iran's recognition of the State of Israel was certainly not addressed. In the end, after 20 months and millions of dollars of resources and a signed document of 159 pages, it turns out that this big deal is not so big. The question of the hour: will the proposed agreement, signed and on the table, protect the security of Israel and her allies? The answer is no. But doing nothing, the answer is also no. What will this deal do? What might it provide? What can be gained from this deal? I would suggest 3 things: a little time, a little access, and a little cooperation among leading nations of the world. First, a little time. Instead of a few short months from producing a nuclear bomb, it's a few short years, and we can make something of that time. On the one hand, 15 years is just the blink of an eye. According to this signed agreement, Iran is entitled to a nuclear bomb in 15 years. Terrifying. Israel will only be 82 years old then. On the other hand, a lot can change in the world in 15 years. Consider the last 15. Arafat is gone. Saddam Hussein is gone. Bin Laden and Gaddafi also gone. These past 15 years, we saw Israel withdraw from Gaza. Syria has imploded. 9/11 changed everything, of course. And God help us, ISIS has arrived on the scene. And also last year, miracle of miracles, Israel struck oil and gas. So yes, things do change, and sometimes very quickly. So how might we leverage this little time that this little deal allows? That is one of the primary questions of the day. Number 2, a little access. Yes, there is no trust. And we can assume that there will be attempts to cheat and lie and hide. And yes, that 24-day period before access is allowed seems absurd. And yes, the inspectors will miss things. And yes, when things are found, we will tie ourselves up in knots about what to do about it. Snap back doesn't sound so snappy to me. To renegotiate and reintroduce international sanctions sounds slow and complicated. And yet, access is access. That is something. What will we make of it? What will the intelligence that comes from it bring to bear? What quiet alliances behind the scenes might be fostered? What communications might open up? These are questions we must be asking even now. And third, a little cooperation among the leading nations of the world. The cooperation gained by this deal is significant. It sounds like the sanctions were beginning to break down on economic grounds. Participating countries were losing too much money on them. It seems the sanctions would not hold that much longer, not across the board, not because the ideology was wrong, but the economy was too damaging. Canada is holding, and that is admirable, but it does not have as much to lose as some other countries, like Japan, for example. If the nations of the world feel through this alliance that they are responsible for Iran's actions, that is something gained, and we can leverage it. Let the burden be shared by the nations of the world. Let it not just be Israel's problem or the United States' concern. Let us keep the leading nations on the hook for tackling Iran's terror machine. Prompted by our sixth sense of memory, we Jews have a good imagination. And we need to be able to imagine the best and the worst case scenarios too. The best, we use this time, this access, and this cooperation to protect Israel and to coordinate the war against new terror. And the worst case scenario, well, we can hardly speak of it, certainly not on Shabbat and not in this sacred place. But our memory, both ancient and fresh, tell us what is possible. Our gut tells us. In our kishkes, we know it. Every political party in Israel, right, left, and center, agrees that there is an existential threat. Every citizen of Israel fears the worst, and so do we. The most frightening images from these last few weeks, frankly, are not those that have come out of Iran, with thousands of men with their fists in the air chanting, "Death to America, death to Israel." It's not new, it's not surprising. The image that haunts me is the celebratory smiles among the negotiators. There is nothing to celebrate here. I want to see them wear serious, focused, determined faces. Their open smiles show that they are pleased with themselves, with a job well done, a mission complete. No, we are just getting started. The worst part of this deal is that it can be interpreted as welcoming Iran into the family of nations, an acceptance of Iran's hateful and bloodthirsty ways. $100 or $150 billion will be unleashed to feed its terror machines. And we know that Iran does not need a nuclear weapon to wreak havoc. It has proven that very well by enabling Hezbollah and Hamas and terror cells throughout the world, even at our doorstep. So what can we do? What must we do? There are suggestions that come from CIJA. I hope you've seen them. The Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs urges us to write to Prime Minister Harper and to leaders of Canada's political parties and to voice our concerns, to ask that our nation's leadership keep Canadian diplomatic and economic pressure on Iran. Number two, CIJA asks us to write to Prime Minister Netanyahu and to leaders of Israel's political parties, expressing our shared concerns and objections. And there is also a very simply worded petition that CIJA is circulating. You can find it on its website. The words are, "I oppose the Iranian nuclear deal. Canada should keep sanctions and diplomatic pressure on the Iranian regime." If you agree with these words, you can sign the petition, which will be presented as a shared voice of the Jewish community of Canada and our friends. We do not have a vote in the United States. We do not have a vote in Israel. But we do have a voice, and we must use it. And I would add one more to the list of suggestions from CIJA, Because my deepest impulse now is to share in solidarity with my brothers and sisters in Israel, and because I want Israelis to know that I share their fear and I share their burden, I would add that we must, in every way we can, reach out to Israelis. We should visit, we should call, we should email friends and relatives, we should Facebook and Twitter articles that call attention to the goodness that is there, so that we feel connected and that they know we are connected. When reflecting on Tisha B'Av, the Talmudic sages teach anyone who mourns on the 9th of Av will rejoice with Jerusalem. When we share in the mourning, then we can share in the joy. But if we do not share in the mourning, we cannot fully share in the joy. God forbid Jerusalem should become again like the Jerusalem of Tisha B'Av, a widow abandoned, a woman violated, mocked by her neighbors, abandoned by her friends. Israel feels more and more isolated today. More and more the polls show that they feel they have to go it alone. God forbid the strain between Israel and the nations of the world grows. God forbid the distance between Jerusalem and Washington should grow. Nothing would make the Iranian dictators happier. And so we must not allow for that. In every way, we need to draw Israel closer. This Shabbat is Shabbat Chazon, Shabbat of vision. It gets its name from the first word of our Haftarah, where it is written, "Why do you seek further beatings? Every head is ailing and every heart is sick. From head to toe, no spot is sound, all bruises and welts and open wounds." Do we accept that terror is a way of life in Israel? Do we accept, as Israelis do, that war is a way of life? Do we accept that every year Jewish lives will be lost simply because they are Jews living in the land of their ancestors? Have we grown complacent? Have we been lulled into acceptance of regular hatred and violence? Not a chance. And so we will leverage this moment for all it's worth. We will point out the failings of the deal, and we will demand a package of political, economic, and military aid to protect Israel and the world from the additional threats it allows. Isaiah says, "It shall come to pass in days to come, for out of Zion shall go forth Torah, and the word of the Eternal from Jerusalem. The eternal God on high shall judge between the nations and shall decide for the peoples. Lo yisa goy al goy cherev, lo yilmedu od milchama. Nation shall not lift sword up against nation, neither shall they study war anymore." This is our innermost prayer. Israel and the Jewish people will always have a role to play in the fulfillment of this prayer. This is our fate. This is our responsibility. This is our destiny. Let me conclude with the words of Abraham Joshua Heschel, who wrote decades ago when Israel was young, "We are tired of expulsions, of pogroms. We have had enough of extermination camps. We are tired of apologizing for our very existence. If I should go to Poland or Germany, every stone, every tree would remind me of contempt, hatred, murder, of children killed, of mothers burned alive, of human beings asphyxiated. But when I go to Israel, every stone and every tree is a reminder of hard labor and of glory, of prophets and psalmists, of loyalty and holiness. We Jews go to Israel not only for physical security for ourselves and for our children. We go to Israel for renewal, for the experience of resurrection. No act is as holy as the act of saving a holy life. Pikuach nefesh, Rabbi Heschel says, the most holy act of all holy acts. And the Holy Land has attained new sanctity through this act. We are the harp, and Israel, David is playing. Amen.